top 10 concepts of Spring Boot. The first one is the most popular, dependency injection. Now, Spring Boot uses dependency injection design pattern to manage dependencies between the objects. Now, this allows for loose coupling and makes it easy to change or test individual components of your application. Now, in that way, Spring Boot is really handy tool for building Java-based applications. It makes it easier to manage the relationship between different objects in your code through this dependency injection. It means that instead of one object creating another object it needs directly, the first object can ask Spring to give it the object it needs. Now, this makes your code more flexible and easier to change because the objects are not tied closely together anymore. The second most popular feature is auto configuration. Spring Boot can automatically configure beans and other components based on the dependencies it finds on the class path and also based on the properties specified in the configuration files. Now, this is a new cool feature of Spring Boot. It means the framework, the Spring Boot framework, can automatically set up certain parts of your application for you. And this automatic setup is usually based on what it finds in the configuration files and on the class path that you give. Obviously, this saves you a lot of time and effort because you don't have to configure those things manually. Let's look at the next one, Spring Boot Actuator. Now, this is again a set of tools for monitoring and managing a Spring Boot application. It provides features like health checks, some metrics it provides, and also auditing related tools. Now, these Spring Boot Actuator tools will help you basically keep track of how your application is running. It has some features like we were talking, health checks. These health checks will tell you if everything is working okay or not. And it also provides some metrics which give you information on about how your application is performing. And these things can be really useful if you are trying to figure out what's going wrong, especially when you are debugging or troubleshooting, and how to make your application run better. The next thing is Spring Boot starter projects. These are Maven projects, and they provide a convenient way to get started with new Spring Boot application. These starter projects are they include a set of default dependencies that you normally require on every project, and build settings also are inbuilt, and these build settings are useful for most of the applications. So starter projects will help you get started quickly. These are like pre-made templates for Spring Boot projects, and these pre-made templates come with a bunch of default dependencies, build settings, so that you can get started if you are planning on setting up a new application really quickly. There's a Spring Initializer, which is a specific tool that lets you create a starter project with all the dependencies and build settings that you choose. Means you can customize what are the dependencies that you want to include and what are the build settings that you want to have as part of this Spring Initializer. The other thing is Spring Boot CLI. This is a command line tool for quickly prototyping Spring Boot applications. Now, this Spring Boot allows you to run Groovy scripts, and these Groovy scripts can create, run, and test your Spring Boot applications. Now, this can be really handy if you are trying your new ideas out and you want to see if they are going to work well with you or not. The next thing is Spring Boot Dev Tools. Now, Spring Boot Dev Tools is a set of tools that make it easier to develop and test Spring Boot applications. So basically, Dev Tools is like a kit, developer's kit. Now, this Dev Tools kit includes some features like automatic application restarts and live reloading of code changes, that kind of things that are usually more useful for the developers. Apart from that, it can also save you time by making the code changes and live reloading, which lets you see your changes in the browser right away without refreshing the browser manually. The next one is Spring Boot Test Tools. This is a testing framework for testing your Spring Boot applications. It provides all the features of testing, especially the behavior of an Spring Boot application and also the components and the dependencies in a Spring Boot applications. Then the last one is Spring Boot Data. This is a set of tools that will help you work with data in your application. It supports popular databases and data store technologies. So it's easy to store and retrieve data. And finally, the most important tool as part of Spring Boot is Spring Boot Security. Now, this is a set of tools again for adding security features easily to your application. Now, these security features will include support for authentication, basically verifying that a user is authentic. And then the authorization part, this is basically granting or denying access to certain parts of your application based on the user's roles or permissions. Now, this security framework or security set of tools also support for secure communication, especially HTTPS part or SSL part, which is very important when you're sending sensitive data over internet. So these are the most popular aspects of Spring Boot. I hope when you are learning Spring Boot, you have covered most of these things as part of your learnings.